welcome as India prepares to celebrate its 69th Republic Day. The countdown has begun for the build-up to General Elections 2019. That's right. Today, on India Today, who will win the general elections if they are held today? Is Narendra Modi set for another 5 years in office, or is the Congress slowly making a comeback? India Today's biannual Mood of the Nation poll is back to give you a sense of what lies ahead over the next 2 hours. The answers to all the big questions. That's right. Welcome to the Mood of the Nation poll, as we bring you all the results that you will also find in the latest issue of the India Today magazine. The methodology: 12,148 interviews conducted by Karvi Research, who have done the poll. Remember, the surveys of 97 parliamentary constituencies, they were surveyed between the 30th of December 2017 and the 9th of January 2018. And they are a representative sample stretching across the country. And we have special guests joining us to give us a sense of what these survey data will mean. That's right, those are the dates. Joining me now, Raj Chengappa, Editorial Director, India Today. This is, remember, it's India Today which will take the magazine, which will take responsibility for all the findings. Am I right?
If it goes right.
My neck is on it.
Yeah, remember, if it goes right, India Today Television takes the credit. If it goes wrong, India Today magazine gets the blame. Also joining me, Javed Ansari, our senior journalist and someone who's been integral to India Today TV over the years. Rahul Srivastav, National Affairs Editor at India Today Television. Shweta Punch, joining us, senior journalist with our sister publication Business Today and India Today. She's going to give us a sense of what lies ahead when it comes to the economy in particular. Manisha Priyam, senior political analyst, one of the country's foremost voices when it comes to election analysis in particular. Yogendra Yadav, psephologist and also now the president of the Swaraj Abhiyan, so he wears two hats. We'll ask him
in the previous birth.
Okay, okay, fair enough. And also Jaivir Shergill, spokesperson of the Congress party. And also joining me is also a psephologist turned politician, GVL Narasimha Rao, who will also be wearing two hats, hopefully, on our show today. Okay, let's then turn to the big numbers. And we're going to start, though, with the performance of the Prime Minister, because in the last 3.5 years, Narendra Modi has, in a sense, symbolized the NDA government. It's been his government. How does the mood of the nation rate him? Performance of Prime Minister Modi, 20% said outstanding. That's 1 in every 5. Good was 41%. So you add up the two, it comes to a healthy 61%. Average was 25%. Poor was 9%. Very poor was 4%. So poor, average and very poor, if you add up, comes to about 38% at the moment. But clearly a strong performance when you add good and outstanding. Let's take a look at how people look at various facets of Mr. Modi, his functioning. Is he all talk and no action, as his critics allege? Well, 26% said yes, he's all talk and no action. Character of his leadership was another issue. Adds character to leadership, 20% said that. Not afraid to take risks was 20%, and this is coming out as a strong point for the Prime Minister. Is pro-poor is this time 9%. It was much higher when we did the poll a few months ago. Believes in Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas was 6%. What is the Prime Minister's biggest achievement? Take a look at where the poll stands. Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, 17% are saying the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan is what stands out for them. Black money crackdown was 17%. Corruption-free government was 14%. Demonetization was only rated 4th among his achievements at 14%. GST implementation was at 11%. What are the Prime Minister's biggest drawbacks? Price rise, 23%, that old chestnut which always comes up in polls. Lack of jobs, and this will become perhaps a major talking point today. 22% now are saying lack of jobs troubles them. Farmer suicides was 15%. Add up jobs and farmer suicides, it comes to 37%. Add agrarian crisis to that, it comes to 48%. Say that's the biggest failure. Cross-border terror, 10%. So those are the first numbers that I want to give you. But Raj Chengappa, when you look at these numbers, because I look at the headline and it says why he should worry. We'll come to the big nation numbers in a moment, but purely from a personal point of view, is this poll rating Mr. Modi positively in your view, given the numbers we've just shown?
I think there's some good news for Mr. Modi on this. Certainly his personal popularity is held. He's still seen as the tallest leader in the country. In terms of performance, he should be very happy with the points of Swachh Bharat. That has been his sort of signature program that's there. And if you add up the three other things on corruption, demonetization, corruption-free government, and getting rid of black money, it actually becomes his single biggest achievement. But if you look at the demographics, particularly when you see our Mood of the Nation polls, there are three factors that actually are bellwether factors. And these are, in terms of determining the performance of government, it's corruption, it is jobs, and prices. And in the first factor, he does very well, corruption. But in the other two, we are seeing serious problems. And I think that is why we talk later about why he should worry.
Yeah, we'll get quick points because we've got to go right round the table. First, preliminary points. When you've seen those numbers, Manisha Priyam, should the Prime Minister believe 3.5 years into power, tallest leader, still 61% see him as good and outstanding? Is that what he should hold on to, or the negatives that are slowly beginning to emerge?
So no doubt, if you add up the numbers, does seem like somebody who's accepted by this country as a very tall leader. But the substance of it is somewhat mesmerizing, because even on those counts that he seems to be doing well, no overwhelming issues on which people think he's doing very well, and issues that where he's not doing very well are the ones that he set out to promise to the electorate in 2014 when he went to the electorate.
Okay, I'll come back to more, but I think you've given a useful talking point. Rahul Srivastav, it appears there is no one single issue at the moment which is dominating the political landscape. Is that how the BJP, which you track, is also seeing this? There is no issue. Yes, job growth, agrarian crisis are weak points. Corruption, Swachh Bharat are strong points.
Rasip, when you say that there is no large issue dogging the BJP, I think the BJP realizes there is a crisis. 67% of India lives in villages. Now, if 67 crisis and 67% India is not a crisis, then how do you win elections? The crisis is that BJP has started realizing that, which was depicted in Gujarat, that people are unhappy with the government but are not voting against it. But in 1 year's time, that can change. And that's where the real worry lies.
But the one big number, and Shweta, you know, this is very clear. When you look at this, when you add those who are rating the Prime Minister as outstanding and good, he's still at 61%. So is Mr. Modi the factor? What's becoming clearer is Mr. Modi on certain issues may not have delivered, but there is still a lot of trust and faith in the individual called Narendra Modi.
But Rajdeep, I would look at this poll a little more pessimistically, because I think we're getting warning signals out of this poll. You're seeing unemployment and price rise and fear of job losses. That's the concern that's really high up. And ultimately, when people go out and cast their vote, they want to feel good. They want to have money in their pockets when they're going out and casting their vote. So I think these are the issues that this government should be worried about.
Particularly because Acche Din was the big slogan 5 years ago, 2014. Yes, very quickly.
Just a quick point to add. If you look at the fourth factor, which is another bellwether that has come up in this particular poll, is rural distress. And that, I think, is a major, major problem. So it's just not jobs, it's just not prices. But if you're looking at one big issue, as Rahul was pointing out, it is this rural agrarian distress.
Which means that if I go to rural India today and say Acche Din, people will say, where are the Acche Din?
Why only rural India? Go to come to urban India.
You're saying there is a clear signal in this poll
Absolutely.
that Acche Din have not arrived. That's the signal. Yes, very quickly. Javed. I'll get initial remarks from everyone. Yes.
There is no doubt that this government is riding on the back of the Prime Minister's performance, but they are warning signals, and if he can't turn it around on price rise, lack of jobs and agrarian distress, then there will be a cost to pay come to
GVL Narasimha Rao, first numbers, does it trouble you that the Prime Minister at the moment is finally seeing some signs of people expressing discontent? When I look at the failures of the government, the positives, Swachh Bharat versus job growth is seen as the biggest failure along with agrarian distress and prices. On the other hand, Swachh Bharat is seen as his biggest success, not even corruption, not even the demonetization drive. Does that trouble you? Should that trouble the BJP?
Not at all, Rajdeep. I think the problem with the journalists I think a tribe that you all belong to, and also I have had some a role in it. I think journalists look for news on headlines or to highlight certain negatives, because otherwise it doesn't become a story. But as a researcher,
so what is the story?
I would like to compare.
What is the story? What is the story, Mr. GVL Narasimha Rao, from these first numbers? You tell me the story. You're a journalist, you say, once upon a time.
Yeah, the real comparison would be to compare this with Mood of the Nation 2013 January data. Because India today has been conducting this survey for decades, year after year. And the right comparison for you to do is how does the nation rate this government and the Honorable Prime Minister compared to the government and the Prime Minister in 2013,
okay,
in 2008. I think that's what a researcher would do. And I find these numbers are extremely positive. For a Prime Minister to get a over 60% overwhelming positive rating is something that you don't see in this country repeatedly. I think most Prime Ministers have not been able to get elected for the second time, except that 2009 election. But even then, if you look at Manmohan Singh's rating in 2008, I will bet on you. Please ask your research team to pull out the statistic from your research base. I think Manmohan Singh would have got a lower rating than Prime Minister Modi in 2008.
Okay, so
this is a very positive rating. Okay. And obviously people have high expectations. They see it's this Prime Minister who has delivered, and there are still more expectations. And
okay,
that's how a nation should be.
just take that. Let me take what you're saying is the headline story to the Congress party, because there is something some merit in what GVL Narasimha Rao is saying. When I look at those 2014 ratings, Narendra Modi is about 20 to 25% ahead of where Manmohan Singh was at the same stage. He was facing anti-incumbency. There is no sign of sharp anti-incumbency in this poll. It's not as if the Prime Minister is disliked. That is very clear. In fact, 60% are saying good or outstanding is the Prime Minister's performance. There is some level of faith in the Prime Minister, which you are unable to counter in the Congress party.
Rajivji, I think what you're witnessing today is India Shining Part 2, where the ground reality is far worse than what is being projected today. People of country are slowly realizing that all that glitters is not gold. People, I think, have learned the hard way that strong personalities don't give good governance. Same story was in run-up to 2004. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, 2003 December, they won 3 elections. What happened 2004? The point your projection numbers show is, especially price rise 23%, economy is the Achilles heels of the government. Today, the statistics, India has slipped in 3.5 years far below where it was in 2014. Look, I'm giving you one example, then I'll end. Petrol, when the barrel was 105, petrol was 75. Today, barrel is at 68, petrol is 73 and even 80 rupees in Mumbai. Today, rising prices, rising fuel prices, retail inflation, low collection of taxes is the disaster of recipe served by Prime Minister Modi cold.
Let me for a moment come to you, Yogendra Yadav, because I remember when we did our August poll, you had put out certain warning signals, particularly on agriculture, an area that you're focusing on. If I really look at what Mr. Modi should be worried on, and it was touched upon, it is agrarian distress. Because when I add farmer suicides and agrarian distress, it's by far the #1 issue. And when you add jobs to that, that comes to about 48 to 50%. So almost half the voters are saying failures of the government are on the economy. Is that where Mr. Modi must worry?
It's the economy, and I suppose in the next 2-3 hours we have a lot to talk about that. To my mind, this is all about economy. That's not a view I've generally held. But in this instance, it's all about economy. You see the real value of a poll like this, and the reason why I look forward to every 6 months to the India Today poll, is that it gives me a very nuanced picture of how things have changed over time. Mr. Narasimha Rao is right. We should see these polls in comparative terms. He forgot to mention the 6-month-old poll as well, which we should take into account. To my mind, yes, Mr. Modi continues to be #1, continues to be somewhat unchallenged. But a decline has begun. If you compare your own poll to what you said 6 months ago, a decline has begun. And your poll also gives us a very good reason why the decline may have set in. On the positives, nothing adds up. He clearly does not expect to win election on Swachh Bharat. I mean, we all are clear. What he hoped to win election on is not something which is being recounted. And the negatives are piling up.
But people still see him as a trustworthy leader. When you have 61% positive rating, maybe the only issue is Mr. Modi himself. It may not be demonetization, it may not be even his drive against corruption, it may not be Swachh Bharat, it's Mr. Modi himself. It's now up to him.
It's fair to say that he continues to be far ahead. Maybe we'll get to see figures,
Yes.
comparative figures as well. He continues to be popular, but Rajdeep, again in comparative terms, let's remember, Indians normally do not say very negative things about their prime minister. So the figure of 60%, etc., you could pull out. Manmohan Singh would get probably 5% less. Indians don't say their prime minister's rating is 20%. That never happens. More importantly, I think what's beginning to happen is that, and that's where the reason for worry and reason for possibilities comes, is that performance, poor economic performance, is beginning to turn into perception, and which is what he should be worried about.
You're shaking your head as you're listening to Yogendra Yadav. You don't accept that premise, that the economy has become the focus, and there is a general sense that the Prime Minister has not been able to deliver on the economy.
I mean, the facts of the economy, as I see the polity, are structural facts. So just to think that because all of this is happening, Mr. Modi will lose the elections is not correct. It will politics that will reign supreme. And I think the most important thing today is that there is a lack of law and order, and that is political management of whatever else may be happening in the other fields. So for the Congress party to come and tell us it is India shining #2, who discovered, or YSR in Andhra discovered that there was agrarian distress, not the Congress party in the center. So my real worry is that yes, there is distress. It's not being discovered by the national parties. And the problem is that it will be handled by a state of lawlessness, because law and order is state level subjects.
No, but I come back to his the biggest achievements. We thought one of the promises that he made, "Bahut hui mehengai se maar, ab ki baar Modi sarkar," was one. On mehengai he could claim some success. On corruption he could claim some success. But at the end of the day, you need much more than that, because your expectation was set so high. Is this poll showing the first signs that people are saying, you promised us the moon, you haven't given it to us? Is that where the problem lies?
He promised us 10 million jobs a year. His entire campaign was based on development and jobs and opportunities. And people remember that. Because we have to remember, when this government was voted into power, the economy had already started sliding. So it's just been, they've not been able to arrest the slide. The slide has only been aggravated because of a whole host of structural reforms that were carried out.
Very quickly, yes, go ahead.
Just to add to what Shweta is saying, if you look at the last poll and the previous one, it was affected by two big things that happened: demonetization and GST.
Yes.
Now the impact of that is beginning to wear off. And while people still say that demonetization is good, as we might find later on, they are not thinking that it's ended corruption in any way, so that the impact of that is whittling down in terms of corruption. And the boost that he got in his popularity, which Yogendra was pointing out, 69% found him very popular. Of course, he's dropped by about 8%.
Yes.
And that is partly because he was perceived as taking the big risk, doing something about it. Now the impact of whether that is really fructified or not is beginning to tell, and people are coming back with some answers.
Yes. The thing called demonetization, the big thing, which won him apparently the UP elections, look at the approval ratings for demonetization. So how many more things can be brought out of the hat, which are that type of scale in nature, and which can...
No, I am just worried I'm just worried that are we confusing issues here? The personal popularity of the leader is very high. At the end of the day, Indian elections are partly presidential. You can look at specific issues, and there is no one big issue which seems to tower over all others, which could be a concern for the Prime Minister. What do I go to the people with and say, this is the one issue on which you should vote for me? That is missing. But what is there is the Prime Minister's personal popularity, Mr. Shergill. You can't get away from that.
No, I am not getting away from that or shying away from the reality. But the bitter reality is, Indian voter doesn't cook personality in his kitchen or fill personality in his scooter. That's where the shoe pinches. Today, Mr. Modi, this NDA poor performance is proving to be a very costly affair for the normal citizens of this country. Dal, which used to be 80 rupees, touched 200. LPG cylinder, 400 rupees, touched 800. In this scenario, when the government pocketed 6 lakh crore by raising duties 9 times, didn't share the burden of falling international prices, today euphemistically put it, and I'm sorry to say it, government is behaving like bandits, stealing from the public out of sheer greed.
Rahul, I'll just get you back, but one final point from you, GVL, before we take the break. The concern that you must have is handling of the economy. We've seen in the past, this may be perceptional, and you could say, as some are suggesting, that the problems are structural, but at the end of the day, people will ask questions of who is in power, and petrol is one issue. At the end of the day, the Aam Aadmi is the one who's being hurt today. He doesn't want your explanations on oil prices. You have not passed the benefit on to the consumers when global oil prices were low, and now when they're high, you actually are facing a severe problem both in terms of managing your deficit and in terms of inflation.
No, Rajdeep, either you trust your survey or you trash your own survey. And if you want me to trust your survey, your statistics, I want to give you one statistic. You see, at the end of the day, people look at the overall performance. And the overall performance is a superlative appreciation. I will give you the statistic from your own survey in 2013 January Mood of the Nation poll, which was done exactly at this point of time for UPA2. And this survey had rated Manmohan Singh performance as poor, 27%, 39% as average. Nearly 2/3 of Indians rated that performance to be average and bad, whereas today you have over 60% who are appreciating the performance of the Prime Minister. So that itself tells you that there is overall happiness. There may be areas where people expect even a better performance, but nitpicking, which Congress party does to look at a single commodity and to try and spread gloom.
30 seconds.
This spreading of gloom is not going to work. This
Okay,
will
don't
take the
spread the
Congress
gloom.
further
Very quickly,
This
Mr.
will
Shergill,
take-
don't spread the gloom.
This will take the Congress further down.
Mr.
Rahul
Rao.
is seen as a prophet of doom.
Okay.
Whereas Prime Minister is as seen someone who is creating prosperity.
Okay,
so
the feel-good guru versus the feel-bad Congress is the way it's being positioned. Very quickly.
Mr. Rao, you've answered your question. The reason Mr. Manmohan Singh performed in X-way was that you came. Today, NDA in vital sectors is performing below even than UPA. Agricultural growth, Mr. Yadav is here, 3.8% odd, today is at 1.2%. Unemployment rate, as per your Minister Jitendra Rao, in February 2007 is touching 5% compared to 3.8%.
Okay, let me therefore, but before we end, very quickly, yes, Raj, and
Since
then
he
Yogendra.
mentioned the 2013 poll, interestingly, when we did it in 2003, the same Mood of the Nation series, Mr. Vajpayee was in power. It actually gave BJP a win at that time. And within a year, that entire advantage dwindled and
Yes,
he lost.
but
the
I
election.
just want
So I'm
to
saying
understand this
This
from
is
you.
a very critical...
No, I want to understand from you, Yogendra, the point that GVL Narasimha Rao is making, Manmohan Singh was rated poor or average by more than half. The Prime Minister is rated as good or outstanding by more than half. Should we not see that as the biggest takeaway?
The broad conclusion that Mr. Modi is more popular than Mr. Manmohan Singh was in 1913-14 is a very fair
by
conclusion.
miles.
Yes.
By miles.
Okay, sir, let him now. Okay, yes.
Please allow me to affirm you, which is what I'm doing, unless if you allow me to do that.
Yes.
I think that's a very fair conclusion, though the categories that he is doing is a bit of fudging of categories,
Yes.
but forget that. To my mind, in this discussion, we should not so much be focusing on the reality of economy, for which we should have different polls,
Yes.
different sessions and panel discussions. The real question here is the reality of economy. Is it translating into perception? Which is what the polls do. Polls do not tell you what's the reality of
So
economy.
you think perceptionally a negative trend is emerging in this poll, which should worry
Although
very
it would
quickly?
be-
Yes, Rahul, you've been waiting. Yes.
If you look at Gujarat, what happened? Prime Minister Modi, overarching, huge figure. Gujaratis hate to vote against him. 16 constituencies, a huge nota. People were reluctant against BJP, they were angry, but they didn't vote against Modi. But India is not just Gujarat, India is huge. If you look at India Today survey of states of December 17, I think it was sometime at that time, the only top big state of BJP was in agriculture, Madhya Pradesh. Today you have a situation, the maximum suicides after the June protests of farmers in Mandsaur have been in Madhya Pradesh. The second big state was Haryana for inclusive growth, where you have absolute chaos happening. In 2014, BJP had 282 MPs, but it was a rise of 166 seats. At that time, the anti-incumbency was on the Congress. Now the anti-incumbency will be on the BJP MPs. They have saturated in every big state.
We'll
Gujarat,
come to that. We'll come to the politics of that. We'll come to the politics where the BJP may face the problem of having reached saturation point in several of their dominant states of North and Western India. But there are some signs, as I said, as we look at those early numbers, of some element of a slight disillusionment setting in, if not anger. The Prime Minister rates highly, but there are issues of growing concern on the way his government is tackling the agrarian crisis and jobs in particular. When we come back, we'll take a deep dive into those economic numbers. You're watching the Mood of the Nation poll. Just a quick recap from my colleague Shivarun.
Well, one of the big questions we're asking in the Mood of the Nation poll here on India Today, what is the biggest achievement of Prime Minister Modi? Well, take a look at these very, very interesting findings. 17% of people actually said they think it's the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. 17% said they think that's the biggest achievement. Another 17% said the black money crackdown is Prime Minister Modi's biggest achievement. Corruption-free government, as such as it is, 14% said that is the biggest achievement of the Modi government under Prime Minister Modi. Another 14%, interestingly, said demonetization should be labelled the biggest achievement of this particular government. And finally, 11%, the lowest in this particular question, said it was GST and its implementation that is the flagship, the biggest success of this particular government. So you have all those controversial issues which have all been given numbers, but they are being seen as big achievements by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Let's take a look at the other side. What did people think are the biggest failures of Prime Minister Modi and his government? A 23% of people who responded called it price rise. Not really surprising, given that price rise has been a big issue. 22% harped on the issue of unemployment. 22% said lack of jobs is the big failure of the Modi government. 15% of persons who responded to the Mood of the Nation poll said farmers' suicides can easily be labelled the biggest failure of this particular government. The agrarian crisis that has contributed, 11% said that is the biggest failure of Prime Minister Modi. And finally, cross-border terror. 10% said cross-border terror is the biggest failure.
Welcome back to special coverage of the India Today Mood of the Nation poll, the latest India Today magazine bringing out its biannual poll ahead of Republic Day 2018. And remember, in the run-up to 2019, the big question, who will win the general elections if they are held today? We'll tell you the answer to that in a moment. But let's turn to the next part, which is the deep dive into the economy. Because as we saw in the first segment, the economy is perhaps the biggest concern for the Narendra Modi government. We asked in the Mood of the Nation poll by Karvi for India Today, the key issues: unemployment 29%, price rise 23%, corruption 17%, safety of women 6%, plight of farmers 6%. So clearly, as we said, the economy is dominating the headlines at the moment with unemployment at the top. Has the Modi government handled the economy better than the UPA? 56% say yes, they've handled it better. Same as UPA was 16, worse than UPA was 21%, can't say was 6%. The Mood of the Nation poll also asked, is the government doing enough to create jobs? Yes said 30%, no said 53%, can't say was 17%. Essential commodities prices, have they increased? 69% says yes, they've increased. Same was 21%, reduced was 8%. Mood of the Nation asked that big question that Mr. Modi asked the country in 2014, have Acche Din arrived for you? Yes said 39%, same conditions as before said 14%, no said 42%, can't say said 4%. So mixed signals are coming. When you compare Mr. Modi to UPA, the NDA does better. But when you look at specific issues, particularly jobs, prices and Acche Din, the government seems to not be doing as well as they might have hoped.
Certainly, Rajdeep. I think here maybe the question should be framed differently, because if you start comparing with UPA 2, he certainly looks far better in terms of decisive action that he's taking. There are a lot of reforms being pushed through, so he does look good. But if we just ask, has the situation changed for you? I think the answers would begin to change in that sense. And 3.5 years, people are now, I think, will move away and say, let's not compare with UPA. What have you done? I think that's going to be the big question that's there.
Yes, very quickly, Shweta. Yes. Which of these numbers strikes out for you?
For me, it's the unemployment and fear of job losses, because, you know, these are self-inflicted, this is a self-inflicted pain also on us, because post-demonetization, CMIE did an analysis, and they came up with this data that 1.5 million jobs were lost during January to April in just those 3 months in 2017. So we are looking at a situation where opportunities aren't enough. We are looking at a lot of youngsters entering the workforce and no opportunities for them, no skill development for them. We have all these sloganeering that have come out, you know, skill development programs have been launched, but they've really not taken off.
But the Modi government keeps comparing figures. He did it in Davos, or his supporters did in Davos. Look at FDI of our government, compare it with UPA. Look at inflation during the UPA last year's, compare it with us. Look at growth in 2013,
so I think that's a false comparison to make, because when you compare UPA 2 with the Modi government, of course the Modi government has done much better. Macroeconomic fundamentals have improved phenomenally. Having said that, there is a new set of challenges that we are facing now. We are looking at a very poor job situation. We are looking at small traders, small businesses really hurting. We are looking at a deteriorating, a falling export sector. There are no avenues for exporters.
So you think the issues are changing and therefore they're looking at fresh issues? Yes, very quickly, Javed Ansari.
Look, all this Davos and being decisive and all this will not matter much when people go to the polls. If farmers continue to face the heat, if there are not enough jobs, there will be a huge political price to pay.
You know, I want to come to you, GVL Narasimha Rao, for a moment, because while the government keeps throwing the numbers at us about comparing UPA to NDA, you're hearing from some guests here saying now people will judge you on what you've achieved, not necessarily in comparison. And many are saying you missed the opportunity. This economy should have been growing at 8 to 10%. With demonetization, it was a disruption. You're now back to 6 to 6.5% is the new normal. When oil prices were low, you could have taken advantage of it. You didn't. So there were missed opportunities. In that sense, perhaps you will have to be judged by what's happened in the last 3.5 years instead of constantly going back to 2013 and what the UPA did at a time when the global economy was in strife.
No, Rajdeep, the people, the voters are far more rational than we as commentators are. They certainly don't know. You have certain choices and you make rational choices based on what is available. And even if you look at our own performance individually, you will realize that what is inflation today, what has been the average inflation, people don't look at a single commodity. People look at your overall inflation. What is it last 3.5 years?
Sir, inflation.
It's well below 4%.
Respond. You've raised the inflation.
Can I just complete my statement, because it's unfair. You don't let me complete my statement.
Okay,
I think you look at below 4% average rate of inflation, mostly around 3%, compared to double-digit inflation during UPA era. You see, when you ask people, are the prices going down, nobody will accept it.
1.something% in June to 5% right now. We're looking at 5%.
So you're in the last 6 months. You're saying not necessarily to 2013, but you've got to compare the last 6 months.
20 days, the diesel prices have risen to unprecedented 2014 levels.
Yes.
Means all the haulage of vegetables, fruit grains, everything is going to go up.
And we have to understand
You're going to look at a higher
up,
inflation
it affects
also.
the farmers as well.
But there will be those who will say perceptionally, do we look at 2013 versus 2018, or should we compare the last 6 months, as Shweta is saying, look at the situation compared June to today?
Look at your own survey.
Yes.
I see
Judged
only
by the
2
ground realities
overwhelming
as they
numbers.
exist.
Yes.
One is a thumping majority for Mr. Modi. The other is a thumping majority saying, yes, prices have risen. And whether it is this figure or that, I understand that WPI, basket, CPI, etc. There can be a lot of debates, but there is a definite perception that prices have risen. And let me also state that I was in Gulbarga, which is the Tuar Dal capital of India. Tuar Dal there still sells at 40 rupees a kg. God knows who sells it here and what are those forces that sell it here at 200 rupees a kg. Nobody is reined in the Adatyas. Why do I eat tuar dal for 200 rupees when the farmer still gets 40 rupees a kg?
Yes, very quickly. Yes, Yogi.
One learning from my previous birth that I must have mentioned several times. When Indians talk of price rise,
it's generally a symbol for discontent.
What economists call inflation. They are talking about lack of purchasing power. In other words, of poverty. So when they say महंगाई हो गई है,
Absolutely.
It's not strictly being viewed when one cannot. And the fact is that inflation rates have not been abnormally high. They were not abnormally high during UPA as well. I mean, let's remember, let's not fudge figures.
No, they were in double digits.
They were
At
in
one point,
They were in double digits at one period. Yes.
At one point they became. Overall, inflation figures are not very high by global standards. But when people talk about unemployment and mehengai, which is different from inflation, they're generally talking about worsening economic personal situation.
It's
and
like
that
when your
is what should
purchasing
worry.
power goes down, it starts hurting you.
Okay, so there's a sense that people believe, and it's linking to Acche Din. When I look at the numbers for Acche Din, you know, it is clear that while people are endorsing Mr. Modi's leadership, they are not endorsing Acche Din anymore. So the message is no longer going to the people. Yes, very quickly,
You don't have to go. I'll just make
one
last.
very small and quick point, which is about, you know, as survey researchers, once again, you know, people like to say yes to anything in the world. Ask them any question. Do you want to jump from the, you know, from 8th floor? You'll get 10% yeses for that. I only notice those things in a survey when nays override yeses. And there are two things already here. When no's are higher than
One is
yes.
Acche Din.
One is Acche Din, the other is job. Has the government done enough for jobs? These are things when a survey researcher should sit up and say something significant is
But
being
the
done.
government could well turn around and say the Congress has no recipe for jobs. What is the narrative? Why are you blaming, targeting only? Yes, very quickly, Javid. Yes.
The reality is today people are actually scared of BJP's version of Acche Din. For God's sake, selling pakoras is the BJP's or Prime Minister's version of Acche Din. Pakodanomics is substituting for good economics. The people, the government has to realize unemployment is a ticking time bomb. And I must say, you must compare with UPA. Supreme Court being a lawyer, 44% rise in farmer suicides. FICCI, IBA report has come out today in Indian Express, 58% rise in bad loans in the last 6 months alone, rising NPAs to 7.6% to 4%. Niti Aayog report, which the government refuses to acknowledge, is unemployment is at a 7-year high. Yes, we did a lot. Last comment, when the barrel was 105, we didn't let the public feel the heat. We were still selling at 71. Today, the barrel price at 68, 47, public 380.
All these are arguments.
Last comment.
Rajiv, these are arguments.
This is the reality.
Rajiv, they were
These are
running
not
the
arguments,
oil
sir.
companies
These are
down
facts.
to the ground.
380%
They were killing oil companies.
rise in
And if you kill your
diesel
Maharatnas,
excise.
and if they shut down, what is going to happen to the jobs? I'm
Rajdeep,
sorry.
can I just
They
start?
left a
But I
terrible
just
economy.
want-
reality.
I just want to make a point.
I just want to make a point here. There is a very quick, you know, the sums total of Raj's survey is actually that Mr. Modi public is saying is that you are very popular, but you're daily letting me down.
And you sell
That's
pakoda.
what.
No, is that because of
let's
right?
not.
Is that
Let's not.
expectation? Is that expectation or is that
Let's not.
objectively treated? Is that because you
That's
set
ground reality.
expectations so
Set
high?
an expectation
That's
so
ground
high.
reality.
You know,
also
is that a worry that you have that somewhere, while we could argue that the job situation also represents a larger structural crisis, automation, the world is changing, there will be those who will say, Mr. GVL Narasimha Rao, that some of these are self-inflicted wounds like demonetization when it comes to jobs. There will be those who will say you set the expectation so high that people expected you would actually give them those 10 million jobs a year that you promised. These are promises that you made in 2014 because you were in the opposition, you could get away with it. Now people will say you were in government, where are my 10 million jobs? Does that worry you or not? That jobs are actually, the nays are more than 50% saying we have not got jobs.
Rajdeep, now that all of you have decided that you will not defend your own poll, let me defend your poll and what people through your poll are trying to convey.
Yes.
I think they are not saying what any of you is saying. What they are saying is overall, we still have great confidence in this Prime Minister, his performance, but we still have, there are areas we expect higher performance. And that's quite a positive way of looking at things. I think you are completely trashing your own poll by trying to really look
I take strong objection. You don't want to see the negatives. You only want to see the positives.
I'm saying it. No. I'm willing to see
The
the
government
negatives.
is also very mindful
No,
of the
can
fact
I-
that jobs
can I,
is a
Rajdeep?
problem. The Prime Minister
Rajdeep,
just held
I
a
think
meeting
you
with
see,
all the
there is a-
economists just to
there is a
discuss
IIMB,
this.
Yes.
So,
There is an IIM Bangalore study which you don't want to talk about. You want to only talk about one report which is put out by Rahul Gandhi or somebody, or even Ministry of Labour, which is very selective. I think
IBA,
7
the Banking
million jobs
Association
have
is not
been
run by
created
Mr.
in
Rahul
last 1
Gandhi.
year.
The problem is the government is in denial mode. A classic doctor who doesn't want to realize the magnitude of the disease.
As per EPFO records, you don't want to believe the fact-based, evidence-based numbers. You don't want to believe
Sir, the
your own
fact is, farmer suicide. Please go to visit a petrol pump and a vegetable shop. You will realize the mood of the nation, which is at all-time low. How much is the price of tomato? Please tell me.
No.
Mr. Rao, do you know the price of tomato today? Mr. Rao, do you know the price of tomato? Please tell me. What is the price of LPG cylinder today? Please tell me in the past 3 years.
He cannot.
I challenge you to tell me the price of LPG cylinder.
No,
what
price of tomato today. The tutu meme will carry on. What is clear at the moment? What is becoming clear at the moment is we have a disjunction in the poll. Because the early figures, and we are not trashing the poll, Mr. Narasimha Rao, we are showing both sides.
You're misreading it.
No, sir, I am saying the poll is showing a high level, a reasonably high level of popularity for your Prime Minister, lower than what it was 6 months ago and lower than what it was in 2015 and 16 when we did the polls, but very high compared to what Manmohan Singh had in 2013. If you want to make that comparison, you have every reason to say that we are on a good wicket. But the fact that there are strong indications that jobs and prices in particular are seen in such strong negative terms should worry you. And that slogan, Acche Din, at the end of the day, the Prime Minister is going to have to go to the people with a new slogan. Is it going to be New India? Does New India replace Acche Din, you think, Raj? Is that an effective substitute for Acche Din? No. If you were in the Prime Minister's place, would you go with Acche Din into the next poll?
No, I think he has, given a whole lot of programs. And what people are looking for is delivery. So if you look at some of the earlier results where they say Swachh Bharat Abhiyan is a good program, it is showing up. Where I think he has spread himself too thin. And he has to focus, as everybody has been discussing on this table, on the critical issue which everyone is facing, which is the lack of jobs. If he doesn't address that question, the only other
irrespective of the fact that the Congress is unable to provide a solution to it.
It doesn't matter if people find that a government...
When people vote, it's not so much for solutions they are voting against. Generally, people vote against.
Yes, very last point.
I do feel that the government is more reactive than proactive. Like, for instance, we've seen the economy around the world really change, and that's what's happening in India as well. The IT sector, which was once upon a time a big creator of jobs, that's complete. The nature of that sector has changed. And now we are reacting to it.
When we look at numbers, manufacturing and small and medium enterprises are still not showing the kind of recovery that you would hope.
Absolutely.
So I think, but let's give him credit.
Yes.
He has taken a big bet. Okay, he's dared everybody. He has done demonetization. He's pushed through GST. Everybody would have said, don't do two big reforms. He's done back to back. Okay, he has tried to make certain structural fundamental changes in the economy. We must give him credit. Now, he still has a year. Maybe he's paced himself very well, and we're going to see the change.
Because there are some signs of a recovery that possibly will come.
Let us not sort of, push down everything that he's done.
But will that create jobs is the question.
Okay, that's a good point on which to take a break. I think we've given a sense of the challenges that the Prime Minister faces and the NDA faces in getting re-elected in 2019. But will they get re-elected? Politics at the end of the day is a battle of choices. You've got the Modi-led government on one side, the Rahul-led Congress, and possibly a third front. Who are the people choosing? The big numbers when we return on the India Today Karvi Mood of the Nation poll. Back in a moment.
Thanks for watching the video. For more such news and updates, please like, share and subscribe to India Today. Also check out our other great videos from our channel. We know you would love to.